on my YouTube, you might have seen that I've made a couple of videos about all this palaver that's going on over in Hollywood. Now, some people seem completely not to have heard anything about this at all, and some people like me are kind of being bombarded with it every few seconds, to do with Blake Lively, the husband Ryan Reynolds, and the director of the movie It Ends With Us. So I made a couple of YouTubes about that because I'm finding it really, really fascinating from the point of view of my work and the pickles that people get themselves into when there's no personal accountability and no self-awareness. Because that seems to be what's happening, and I say seem because everything's all to be proved, hasn't it? But one thing that does seem to be happening is the guy that's Justin, who was the director and producer of the movie, it was his project, all the evidence his team are producing is very factual. He's been accused of sexual harassment basically on set. Nothing was done about this particularly at the time, other than a certain point agreement that he literally had to agree to in order that she'd keep filming his movie. But other than that, there doesn't seem to be any proof that she can come up with that this has happened, whereas his team are showing you unedited raw footage of the moments that she's claimed to be the victim of sexual harassment, also texts, emails, all of the rest of it, you know, with the whole context around it as well. There's a big gap between the two sides, if you like, and it's starting to come down more and more in favour of him, and it does look like, you know, he's the victim in all of this, if you want to call it a victim. But it's just really, really interesting if what seems to be the case at this moment in time is the truth. Because if that is so, then she really does seem to have no sense of self-awareness or wrongdoing. She seems to have a really skewed view of the world, and so does her husband, whether it's to do with the mutually share a belief system or whatever it is, or there's underlying things in their relationship. But if you hop on over to YouTube, what you'll see is me going into how I kind of think it's a self-esteem issue on her part. That I think it's like, you know, she could have underlying neurotypical things. I don't really like to bring that into it because I don't like to accuse neurotypical people of not being normal, if you like, or having normal human responses to things or challenges. But there could be an element of that there's some kind of disconnect from typical neuro thoughts, if you like. But it just seems to be that she's kind of being brought up to get what she needs out of life. She's always been facilitated in life by her parents, you know, comes from a wealthy Hollywood type family and all of that. She's never really known struggle or not getting her way. She was, you know, I think her parents facilitated her getting on to a choir that had she auditioned for, she probably wouldn't have got on because she couldn't sing or dance, you know. She was a performer in sense of being loud and, you know, in your face kind of thing, but not really talented in that sense. And she has actually, you know, said as well, when it comes to being an actress, that you can't just put clothes on her and her be an entirely different person. So it's more like the character has to become her than she has to become the character. She doesn't seem to know how to do anything else. And that can also, when it comes to the thing of filming a movie, obviously that can make the lines blur. Because if she's not actually portraying a character, she is in some sense being herself, then when you're talking about doing romantic scenes, sex scenes, scenes where there's touching or intimacy or any of that, makes it a very blurry place to hang out, you know? And it does make things weird, especially kind of when they're saying, well, maybe there was some postpartum issues because she'd not long had a baby. Maybe there was some hormonal element going on, and possibly. But again, I don't like to kind of say that women tend to be irrational, you know, across the board when they have hormones going on that they can't tell when they're being sexually harassed or whatever it is, you know. But it's just been really, really interesting to me to be trying to be the detective, because part of being a rapid transformational therapist or practitioner is to listen to your story, listen to the language that you use, pick up on your metaphors, see what your belief system is, and do that detective work and help you put together all of the scenes and make conclusions. So it's kind of my job to be a detective, to kind of watch things and hear things and be making conclusions from it. And you know, if in terms of a session with me, I would put that to you and say, does this feel true or false, right or wrong? And you'd be free at that point to say, no, it doesn't resonate with me, whatever it is. Even in hypnosis, you'd kind of, you're not being whitewashed in any sense. You know what does and doesn't feel right to you. So kind of, I've been intensely quite curious about. I'm just going to grab a tissue because my nose has started running. Yeah, I've been really quite curious about all of this because she just seems to have, like I said, no sense of self-awareness or having done anything wrong. She basically got hired on to be the lead actress in this movie. This Justin was the director and decided to take the main role. That wasn't initially going to be what he was going to do, but you know, a few people said, why don't you? And I guess it kind of made sense. So he ended up being the lead actor. So she's brought on basically to act as if she's falling in love with this guy. It doesn't turn out to be a good guy in the end. It's a domestic abuse film, and that's another aspect of the problem really, is that she took control of his entire project. She took control of the wardrobe, the script, the editing, the music, did I say costumes, just like across the board, even some of the visual effects. And in the end, it was her, she insisted on having her own cut of the movie. This is someone who's brought on as an actress. She insisted on having her own cut of the movie, and even though his version tested better with a test audience, the movie studio put her version out. So you can see how this is a woman who's used to getting her own way. And what's also transpired, she's dragged my friend Taylor Swift into it because, you know, she kind of either accidentally or planned or not planned, we don't know at this point, she had Taylor Swift knock on the door when there was a meeting going on in their penthouse, and she was trying to have script changes to suit herself. And I think this Justin was trying to stand his ground and saying, oh yeah, it's a good idea, but I'm just not really sure. Maybe some of it will make it in. Taylor Swift knocks on the door, and you know, the next thing is she's praising all the how wonderful Blake's ideas are and blah blah blah. I don't think she tried to twist his arm or anything, but powerful lady knocks on the door when you're already sat with two pretty powerful people. You know, it can be quite intimidating, can that, even for the strongest of people. And then there's the text Blake Lively sent later when sounds like he's still trying to hold his ground on the script, and she said basically, I'm Khaleesi from Game of Thrones and I have these dragons in the form of her husband and Taylor Swift, and basically if I don't, you know, things go my way, my dragons will help you. If things don't go my way, you know, you've had it, basically, you're toast. So it's so, it's so funny because I watch these, you know, YouTubes or whatever, and I'm thinking, now, is this my version of doom scrolling? Am I trying to tell myself that this is educational? You know what I mean? And actually I'm getting some form of guilty pleasure, but I do just find it so interesting that even, because it started out with her saying she'd been sexually harassed on the set of the movie, and then the next thing she'd elevated the language to being abused. Now, abused is an entirely different thing. You know, I would imagine every single woman out there has experienced sexual harassment, you know, multiple times. I know I have, for sure, with people who, you know, within my close circle that should have known better, time and time again. So most women know that. They know what sexual harassment is. Abuse is a whole other thing entirely. And she elevated the language multiple times, not just once. It's like even when he's come out and produced this footage and his own text message and all of this, the only response so far from her side is to say this is exactly what an abuser would do. They deny it all and throw it back on the victim. They've not addressed any of the points that is actually clearly shown. You know, pictures, sound, written documents. You know, it's there. It's just there. He's even saying he's willing to set up a website and put everything he has on it. Because I think the thing is, he's kind of done his best. From what I know, maybe it will turn out he was some kind of harasser. It's not looking that way at this point in time. But, you know, it looks to me like he's a fairly nice guy who knows he has these powerful people involved in his project. It's his first big, well, it might be second directing project, but certainly more mainstream as a movie, you know, but more blockbuster type thing. So I think he's put up with a lot of interference in order to just keep the project moving, and he's accepted a lot of slurs being put on him, and just signed off on it because of the threats of, well, I won't turn up to film, I won't promote this movie, but from the other side, you know, so he's had to keep just taking it on the chin, basically. And part of that seems to be his own nature, to be just quite easygoing, you know, and just quite pro-women. If you watch one of these YouTube videos, you'll see, I think that's probably part of the problem, that he's trying so hard to be a feminist, that he's not being a very good masculinist. What's the proper word for that? But you know what I mean? When there's not a strong man around that's acting in a masculine way, it can be really disruptive for a woman. You know what I mean? Really quite confusing. And I don't mean that in unflattering terms. But that seems to be what's happened. He's kind of taking it and taking it and taking it. And obviously, she is someone that's been brought up to always get away and always be supported by the people around her, not be questioned. She's kind of got more power and more power and more power and more power, till in the end it's been her project. I mean, she even approved like the marketing material, so his face wasn't on anything. It went from being a two-shot of them to being simply her with a floral background. So she wiped him as much off the project as she possibly could. I found it interesting. It's, where have I seen it popped up? On one of my TV watching apps. But now the picture has been changed from just a picture of her to actually being his picture, and his name's back on the picture of, you know, whereas it was just her face, her name. He'd been wiped off his own project. Now there seems to be a thing of, oh, actually he's sliding back onto his own project, you know, at this point, was kind of starting to wake up to it. Because even down to the marketing of it, he was doing his best to promote it as a movie about DV, about domestic violence. He was trying to keep the female perspective on what it's like to be in one of these relationships. Meanwhile, she was going around saying this is, you know, a female empowerment story. Yes, but it's about wearing your floral outfits and rising above and being all of it, being messy, being this, being that, being the other. And, you know, we don't often see messy women on camera, and I think, what the hell is she talking about? There's messy female characters in movies all of the damn time, as well as messy male ones. You know, it's looking to me like she doesn't really know how to be a real person. And that is what happens when you kind of, you know, people think about growing up with no self-esteem or low self-esteem as you've had a lot of bad stuff happen to you in your childhood, which is absolutely right. You know, if you've been told often enough that you weren't good enough, or you were set up to fail in terms of a lot of responsibilities put on you as a child that you couldn't possibly fulfill because you're not an adult, yes, that can lead to really low self-esteem. But what can also lead to really low self-esteem is if you've never been challenged, you've never had to figure it out for yourself, if you've always had other people paving the way for you, you've never had that chance to build up your own self-esteem and your own coping mechanisms. So what happens is you grow up always needing somebody else to facilitate you getting your own way, because you can't handle not getting your own way. That's it, basically. So my feeling is starting to feel like actually her problem is that she doesn't really have any self-esteem. She doesn't even, because, you know, as an actor, you have to be fairly resilient in order to pretend to be someone else for long periods of time. And she's already said she can't do that. She can't pretend to be someone else that easily. What she said is she has to be a producer. She has to take control of it. Basically, she has to make it about her, because it has to be her playing it. It has to be her character, not a character that's been written on the page, because she doesn't know how to do that. So everything has to conform to her. So for me, I just find it personally fascinating from a human perspective of what's behind it all and what must be behind a husband in order to live with her, because either he's on board, is of a similar mindset. There's people saying that he has anxiety issues and control issues and such and such and such. And, you know, Ryan Reynolds is often, you know, whenever you see him interviewed, it's joke after joke after joke after joke after joke. He doesn't really answer a serious question. He deflects. And that's not a problem if you do that some of the time, or if you use sarcasm some of the time, but it's a problem when that's all that you do. Because again, that's that thing of you don't really know how to be a real person. You don't know how to be yourself, or yourself is lacking in some way and you feel a constant need to cover up for that. So I'm finding it all really, really fascinating. And at this point in time, I just hope, I really do hope that this Justin, the director guy, is on the level, and you know, that's where it is. And what I think is really important, more than people jumping on and slagging Blake Lively and slagging Ryan Reynolds and all of this, is to look at themselves and think, do I do this in any kind of way? Is there aspects of me that finds it hard to be who I am? Do I know who I am? You know, if I didn't have any friends, if I didn't have anybody to facilitate my needs, how strong would I actually feel? Would I feel like I was resilient? Would I feel like I could cope with anything? Because, you know, there's so many people out there who just fall apart when the spouse dies, or, you know, somebody that was facilitating their life in some way suddenly decides to do something else entirely with their life. So I think you kind of, if you're interested in this, try and look at it from the perspective of what can everybody learn about this, about themselves, about being self-aware and accepting your culpability in things as well, you know. The thing is, a lot of wrong can be done to you in your life, and you don't have to forgive it, but you have to say, in order to take control of it and for it not to wreck your life and what happens to you next, you have to take some accountability in the sense of, right, this has happened. What can I learn from it? Not in a blame thing, but just, you know, what can I positively take from this that's going to make the next chapter of my life easier? Because the thing is, you can change your life at any given moment. Every single second, you have the chance to change your life, because you can change a thought, and you can change an action, and you can change a belief in a second, basically. So as bad as your life is right now, the first thing you can do is stop saying my life is terrible. You know, that's a choice. You know, we all have crap in our lives that we're dealing with. We all have money struggles and the rest of it, job trouble, whatever it is. But it's all in how you look at it. Because every second, everything that you say, everything that you think is automatically being reflected back to you in the world that you see. Because every negative thing you think or say or believe, or a habit you act off of, all of that comes back to you. It's immediately directly reflected back to you. So at any given time, this Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds could say, look, this isn't good. It's not doing us any good. Let's just stop it. Let's hold our hands up, or let's take some kind of measures that's just going to make it all die down and go away. But they're not doing that. They're sticking their feet in the ground and doubling down on it, tripling down on it at this point in time. So there's no self-awareness, because even say she had been sexually harassed, and if what she's shown so far is what she calls sexual harassment, it's very vague. It's indefinable. You know, it just simply does not look that way. And that's just not just me saying it, it's pretty much everybody on the internet. Except for people that are very, 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 very sensitive, or very, 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 very hurt. You know what I mean? So it's not looking good for her, but instead of allowing it to go away or whatever, they're doubling down, tripling down on it. And all of that will be filtering through to their children too. You know, and it's impacted absolutely everybody around them too. It's impacted Taylor Swift at this point. It's impacted everybody on that cast. It's impacted the author, Colleen Hoover of the book. She's deleted her Instagram because she don't want to deal with it. Because they all sided with Blake right off the bat. You know, she said, whatever she's told them, they all went. Team Blake helped her cut him out of the movie premiere and all of the promotion and everything and all of that. And now it's like, was that a good idea? You know, so it's impacted all of them. They all don't know what the heck they're going to do next at this point in time. They're all staying quiet. So, but there seems to be no greater sense of what they're doing to everybody around them that they purport to care about as well. So it's really, really interesting to me. I mean, if it does go to court, it might take years and years and years. But it's just such a shame, really, that we don't wake up to ourselves as human beings and think, is it worth pursuing this? Is it worth what it's going to cost? Is it worth all of my thoughts being on this thing and feeling so victimized and the world's against me and it's so unfair and it's just kind of crazy, you know? But it's like, if you are following this thing, just try and look at it from the wider perspective of what you can learn from it about human behaviour and the things we do to ourselves and issues like victimhood, you know, and how we choose to look at the bad things that happen to us in life. Because, you know, the problem is when really, really, really bad things happen to us in life, it's often a case of we've walked ourselves right into it with our own actions, our own behaviours. You know, it often is the case of that, but we often refuse to see that, and we often tell ourselves it's life doing that to us or somebody else has done that to us. But sometimes, you know, it's often the case of we allowed somebody else to do that to us because we didn't speak up, because we're a people pleaser. We can't say no. We're not strong enough, secure enough, can't stand on our own 2 feet, basically. And the more you tell yourself that your life is being done to you that's not in your control, the more and more bad things will happen to you. So, you know, things like learning how to build up your own self-esteem, your own self-confidence, your own self-worth are vitally, vitally important. So that's why techniques like rapid transformational therapy and my other modes of hypnotherapy are so absolutely life-changing, you know, because it changes absolutely everything across the board, basically, when you change what's going on in your subconscious mind and how you perceive the world around you. So I hope that was helpful. Don't lose too much time doom scrolling about Blake Lively. Try not to do what I'm doing. All right, I will see you later.